get some discussions and some feedback on this the protection systems for smart grids. Okay. So the the outline of today's talk is like this. Um, we'll start with introduction, and the way what I had structured this presentation is that half part, first part, would be introduction for the smart grids. Means what are the smart grids features and smart grid functions, and then the second part I will be focusing on the protection and control systems for smart grids. Uh, Here also, I'm slightly moving away from what you would be expecting from such kind of presentation. I'll be giving a more general presentation for the foundations of the protection systems required for smart grids. I will not discuss any particular protection scheme or thing. For that, you have lots of papers getting published and can get the basic idea much more from the recent publications. What I will be discussing more is the thing that you would not find in general publications, but are very, very important for uh, new age and new generation protecting things. So we'll see you as we go on, and I request the sessions to be more interactive. You can interrupt me anywhere, and I will also try to get some of your views in between as and when we progress, and so that both of us, so you, myself, also get best out of this talk. So start with the acknowledgement. And as I, as the madam mentioned, I worked in the protection systems. I've worked for now almost now 20 years in protection system areas. Earlier, I was in ABB company, was R&D engineer there, and I have designed protection relays during my work in ABB. Then I went for academics and did my PhD. That was also in wide area measurements and protection. So my association with this field is long, but I have not done any specific work for smart grid protection. So whatever smart grid protection things and the new kind of protection thing is I am just starting to work on it. I'm interested in this area, but at present, I don't have any my own work to share. So what I have done today is that I have taken IEEE a power system relaying committee publications. There are very good some of the very good publications are there, and I have based my today's presentation mostly on these three things. That is the role of protective systems for smart grid, then the centralized substation protection and control, and protection challenges for interconnecting inverter-based resources. Okay, and my main aim for today is this thing to encourage faculty and researchers in this exciting field. That you, I want that pursue some research in this area and some concrete research in this area, which is really useful, and we get some new benefits out of it. So with this, we'll start with the introduction of part. This is the first part of the talk, and this will be mostly about the introduction of smart grid. What is a smart grid? And then we slowly move towards the protection age, specific talks of the smart grid. So Smart grid is a slightly now it can be say kind of old subject, but still not many people have very good idea of what a smart grid is, and it is because of the name also. The smart grid itself is very generic name. It does not convey much unless you go inside it and really understand. Means if you talk to old people, old means even like people like me who have worked in this area for long, will say our grid was already smart. Yes, what is there? Something new. It is just a new name. But when we really go inside and see the features, you will start realizing that this is not the case. There are something very specific things in the smart grids that I just want to show them here. So actually the name smart grid comes from USA, and it is a real USA government program. Uh, uh, that is the Department of Energy in the USA. They implemented this modern grid initiative, and they created the name smart grid, and we power system people really just adopted that part. So this is a it is like in India we have this Swachh Bharat mission. It is like that, a government program of US government, but then it is very common thing. So all over world we have adopted this word smart grid. Now, what was the aim of that program? That the program says that the benefit of properly implemented smart grid should be for both utilities and the customers. And this benefit include more reliable, cost-effective system, aids system operation during events or possible attacks, and allows customers to view energy usage in real time. So all these things, if are like a first year B student also knows that power systems, when we talk, we always have been aiming, means since 100 years old we have been aiming for this thing, more reliable cost effective systems, and aid system operators during events and possible attacks. So this is not, these things are not new. So what is new in the smart grid? The new thing is this, that is a modernized grid would create an energy system that will, what it will do, it will detect and address emerging problems on the system before they affect service. So this is something new, because all our uh, protective relays, if you see, are how they just mm, they act after something has happened. Means if the fault has happened, the protective relay will isolate the system, the faulty system. But there is very less thing or very little things that we do which prevents fault from occurring. But through smart grid, what we want to do is if we want to detect and address emerging problems before they affect the service. So this is something new that we want to do. Uh, is one a small analogy that I learned very early in my work in ABB. I had a very senior kind of mentor person for me. He told me this thing that say if you have gone to some hill stations and something, and if you have are at the top of some hill, uh, uh, you will see that there is one side there is a hill, another side there may be a very deep valley, and the people there, the government or whatever the authorities, they would have made some kind of fencing over the hill, so that people don't go very near, or they don't fall down in the valley. So that kind of protective fencing is there. Now, our protection system is not like that. We don't have any fencing at the top of the hill. What we do is the traditional protection system. We provide a ambulance at the valley. So if anybody falls down, we'll take the ambulance and take that person to hospital very quickly. But there is nothing like fencing at the top which prevents person from falling down. So this is how means we call them thing as a protection system, but it is more like a ambulance which actually does not protect, it only just save people from further damage. But with smart grid, we want to move towards that kind of fencing thing that address emerging problems before they affect the system. Okay, so this is very important thing to understand. What is features of smart grid? The next is respond to local and system-wide inputs, uh, and have much more information about the broader system problems. It is not something uh, uh, one pocket problem, another pocket problem, and we address them individually. If you want to address a system-wide problem through smart grid, because it is a grid, it is not a small circuit or a small feeder. We want to look at it as a system-wide level and system-wide solutions. The next is this thing: incorporate extensive measurements, rapid communications, and centralized advanced diagnostics, uh, and feedback control that quickly returns the system to stable state after the interruptions or disturbance. So the the last part is again like that ambulance. We still want to keep that ambulance also. Means if there are any disturbance, we want to quickly return to the stable state. Okay, so that the effect of the interruptions or the disturbance is not so extensive. And to achieve that again, what we want to do is extensive measurements, rapid communications, advanced diagnostics, and feedback control. These are the things which we can apply. Yes. A better ambulance with oxygen, with ICU facilities and everything. So that kind of thing is also, we are not doing away with that part. So we are also strengthening that part, but also trying to prevent that. Okay. So the key point is this thing. For smart grid, whenever you think about smart grid, you think about system-wide inputs, not the local inputs, communication, and feedback control. These are the three things which always should come to your mind whenever somebody talks about smart grid. So this is clear. Can move further or want some elaborations in this part. This is just the definition of the smart grids. We'll just say further. Now we go into some kind of slightly more details, and that is smart grid functions. So what should smart grid do in very specific area? Even till now, I have not told. I just say that smart grid is it can prevent some faults and it can do feedback control with advanced communication. But these are all vague things. Concrete thing is this thing. Is first thing is minimize system disruptions. Okay. So the aim itself is very clear. We are minimize the disruptions so that uh, system, what is there, the healthy system that we are operating remains healthy always. Okay, and to that, to minimize that thing, what you have to do is use real-time information from the embedded sensors and automated control to anticipate, detect, and respond to system problems. So you have to just identify and anticipate that such kind of problems could come in our system, and what should be our response to it. Okay, so that is how we can minimize system failure. So avoid or mitigate power outages, power quality problems, and service disruptions. So how to avoid service disruptions and power outages? First, start itself from the design itself. That the power systems can be designed through use of interconnected topologies. That failure of one part of the network will result in no loss of supply to end users. The end users is somewhere like us. So, power systems or the grid, the the smart grid now should be designed in such a way that even if some components or some elements of that smart grid fails, the end user does not feel any difference. His power quality, his supply should remain as it is. Thus, that nothing has happened. So that is how we minimize the system disruptions. Okay, this is one feature of smart grid. The smart grid functions. Second is consumer participation. So this is totally new thing. Was not there earlier in traditional grid, but the traditional grid is consumer is passive. You can just it is like that. The consumer is there. You will receive some power supply, and he can consume. He can just switch on any appliance and expect that the power is there, and you can use the electricity. That is the traditional grid. But a smart grid is enables consumer to better control appliances and equipment at homes and business through means of interconnected energy management systems. So there could be some two-way communication between the consumers and the grid systems. So this results in improved energy management and reduced energy cost for consumers. So it is consumer participation is not just that okay, nowadays some communications available, a consumer can participate or can communicate with the utility agencies. But the ultimate aim, why you want to communicate, is this thing, that to reduce the energy cost for the consumers. Otherwise, there is no benefit for the customer. Unless the energy cost of the consumer is going to reduce, nobody is bothered to communicate, because okay, we are electrical engineers and power system engineers, but everybody else they are not there. They are only, most of the people are only worried about their electricity bills, nothing else. They don't worry, they don't know what is current, they don't know what is power. But at the end of the month when they receive some bill, they can see okay, ये कुछ smart grid किया है, तो then my bill has reduced from 2000 rupees to 1500 rupees. That is the ultimate benefit that consumer should get through participation. Okay, so how? That is a real-time two-way communication. The technologies is now available. This enables consumer to be compensated for their effort to save energy and sell energy back to the grid. Okay. Only a TVA advertise or paper advertise, okay, save energy and save electricity and such things. We know that really don't work. Only for it is good for advertisement. It is good for feel good, but what actually works is this thing. This is the real compensation in terms of some money or something for their efforts to save energy. Okay. And the important part is this thing that saving energy should not mean to be kind of inconvenience to the consumer. It is not like that. There is night and you just put on the light, put off the light, and say you are saving energy. It is not like that. The person is still wants to use. He want to do their washing machines. They still want to use their electric induction cookers and whatever other things, the AC and everything. Yet, mm, there could be some areas where there are scope of reducing the energy, and for that, reducing the energy consumptions without getting inconvenience, person should be compensated. Okay. So this is the consumer participation. This is a kind of very new things for smart grids. The next function of smart grid is resist attacks. The attack can be man-made or natural disruptions. Cyclones can come, floods can come, heat wave can come. The smart grid technology is the grid that is having such features should resist and should respond to such things or man-made effort. Man-made, I mean, somebody just taking away the electricity towers or cyber attacks and such things. Again, how to do it is smart monitoring. This is the essential for control and management of the smart grid. Means if you are monitoring the systems and you come to know that something is happening, something unusual is happening, or you have good forecast of impeding more rains or impeding cyclone, how you manage it. That is that comes under this resist attack. Then high quality power. High quality power is power quality has again two features. One is the availability of power 24/7. Very good power at rated frequency, at rated voltage and everything. So that availability means reduce system downtime. There is no interruptions and it prevents loss of productivity. To achieve again all the things is the intelligent softwares. So that it people who are managing the grid, they should come to know through sensors and the softwares that some interruptions has occurred or some device has malfunctioned. And if this information is available, a automatic restoration work can be done properly. Then accommodate generation options. So this is again a very new feature of smart grid. This was not there earlier for our traditional grid. It is a small scale localized power generations, rooftop solars, uh, small wind turbines, wind generations, or in hilly area you have micro turbines running on the run of the river things. So this kind of generations are there, which we want to accommodate in our grid. Means they should not be a standalone. They should be a, they're connected with the grid so that the customers can self-generate and also sell excess power to the grid. Okay, that is most important thing, and how we should facilitate it with minimal technical barriers and minimum regulatory barriers. Technical barriers should also be not there. Means what we can just, like we can consume power by just switching on a light, switching on this fan, switching on AC. Similarly, consumers should be just able to switch on some generation source, and the grid should be such that it will absorb this power. Okay. So why you want to do this is that integration of the generation options improves reliability and the power quality. The power disruptions that we were talking about, system downtown, and everything can be reduced, and reduce the electricity cost and offer more consumer choices. Now, today at my home itself, we have solar rooftop. A solar rooftop is so nice that uh, I am earning money through it, because my monthly bill uh, of my home is much less than whatever the generations that I am seeing from the solar rooftop. Solar rooftop is there passive, even uh, like I know, because I am a power system person, but my family and these people, they may have even forgotten it that we have solar rooftop. It is like that. They just keep on running, accumulating the energy, giving in the energy to the grid, and just we come to know about whatever energy generations was there at the end of the billing cycle, where we say that we are going to credit 500 rupees to your account. Only then we are just actively aware that something is there at our home. But if we have choice, we can just go and see. I can right now go and see through my mobile what is my generation, how much I generated yesterday, how much I generated in any 15-minute time block, that I can see. So all these features are there, and there the grid here is such that it accommodates this generation without any issue. Okay. Other functions is enable electricity market. So it should create an open marketplace where alternative energy sources from geographically distant location can easily be sold to consumers wherever they are located. Okay. Alternative electric energy sources means, again, renewable energies like wind and solar. They are there. They may be located at far off places in some desert area or maybe some coastal area with high winds. And these things. The grid should be such that it also absorbs this power, and the the generation companies of this energy sources, they should be able to sell the electricity to any consumers located wherever they are located. This is also a very important thing, because alternate sources are intermittent. Intermittent means they sometimes come, they sometimes may not come. They are seasonal. Solar is anyway daily thing, so it only works in the daytime. All such things, there should be good electricity market which adapts to these characteristics, uh, and still compensate the generators for them. So even enable small producers to generate and sell electricity at local level using alternate sources. So this is there. It should not be a barrier. Okay? You have to be generating some megawatt level thing. Then only then you can sell electricity. As I said, I can sell electricity from my home right now using a small scale, only just 4 kilowatt capacity rooftop. Still, I'm able to sell it, and I'm able to earn money through it. Okay. So an optimized asset. This is also very important thing. that electricity as its transmission lines and generation systems and distribution systems are very very costly thing. It's uh, big infrastructure and we want to use it to the limit. Means whatever value we can get out of it, we should be able to get, so that optimal use can improve the usage of the existing grid asset and reduce grid congestions. So it should not be like that we have very big investment and some small bottleneck or one small transformer, two small transformers may limit uh, overall effectiveness of our grid. That should not be the case. And enable high penetration of intermittent generation sources. Intermittent sources, one part I said about electricity market, that is money part, but the technical part is should also be taken care of. As that mm, a power source is there, somebody is there at home depending on solar rooftop or some small wind turbine. If the wind stops or if there is a cloudy day, it, the end consumer should not feel any difference for as far as electricity consumption is there. The grid should support it, but that today if generation is not available locally, the electricity should come from the grid. Okay, and so that you should not get lower reliability. Our aim of the smart grid is to improve power quality, improve higher reliability. But doing this, it should enable both the suppliers and the consumers to compensate for such intermittencies. It is not a one-way street that all the things consumers want they should be like that. It, from electricity point of view, it should be like that. Means should get the power whenever it is required. But to do that, the the, the supplier, means uh, the grid owner should also be properly compensated. That he is providing this very good service, a proper compensation in terms of money, tariff, everything should be there. So these are the main functions of the smart grids. Just recap them. First is system disruption should be minimized. Second is consumer participation, resist attack, high quality power, accomodate generation options, local generations, enable the electricity market, optimize assets, and mm, high penetration of intermittent generation sources. So these are the functions of the smart grid. Now, as this is now make the smart grid more concrete than some vague term what a smart grid is. So whenever somebody talks about smart grid, you have to think, count down these features and see that whether these things, whatever a person is talking about, whether they meet these requirements or not. Okay, at least most of the this requirement should be met. It is not like that everything is met. But most of the things should be met. Then and only then we can talk that okay, yeah, this thing is smart grid. Otherwise, a lot of people are there. We are just even in technical papers also doing something else and selling it as a smart grid. It is not should not be the case. Okay. So any doubt or any comments before I move further? If anybody wants to add something here that some features may be missing, uh, like that, can have. Okay. Then if nothing is there, I'll just move forward and can have some discussion later on. Uh, the next is the smart grid features. How to achieve all the functions of the smart grid. Actually, what can the utility do, or what can consumer do uh, to achieve this from technical point of view? That is, this is called the smart grid features. So first feature is load adjustment. Load adjustment mm, is something which gives much more flexibility to our smart grid operation. In traditional grid, the maintenance of stable local grid for specific failure can only be achieved at the cost of more standby generators. So if there was some load, and if you want to say cater that this much load should be there and should be supplied, whatever may be the conditions, then what was done earlier was that you have to have some kind of more standby generators, that if one of the generator goes away, you can quickly bring in this new generator so that you can maintain the total load demand, and whatever total load demand was there is mm, met at all the time. The reliability of the system was improved, but at a very cost of more standby generators. In smart grid, if we say want to reduce uh, the cost of electricity for the consumers, this is not the right way. Here, right way is that there should be something the utility person should have some way of load reduction of the client, so that even a small reduction of the client may eliminate a big problem of the generator. So this is load adjustment. This is the smart grid features. So something called demand response, something called volt var control or voltage signals. These are the different techniques used for load adjustment, so that we should avoid very costly standby generators. Then that this demand response support is a part of the load adjustment only, that allows the generators and the load to interact in automated fashion in real time. The demand response support should also be there. It is not a, a offline activity or something that is done over week or something. It should be in real time and automated, so that even the end consumers may not even know that they are participating in the demand response, but they could reduce their load and and flatten the load spikes. The load spike are something which for very short duration overloads our system, and they are very costly. So if we are flattening that load spikes, the system operation cost can be reduced very significantly. Then greater resilience to loading. This is another feature that uh, smart grid technology uses this preventive cascading outage, and using intelligent reconfiguration. If some part is getting overloaded, some component or some transmission line, you can reconfigure the power flow, you can reconfigure the network so as to relieve that loading. So that gives this makes the system more resilient against simultaneous failures of elements. So if something one element fails, it may overload something else, and then that element fails. Uh, some third element gets overloaded and it fails. So this chain continues. That is called this cascading outage. But using reconfigurations and not just reconfiguration, manual. but intelligent reconfigurations can allow or you can sustain some of the element failures so that the overall system is much more resilient. So this is the smart grid features, technical features, which enables us to achieve all our smart grid functions. Decentralization of generation. This is what we talked earlier, that smart distributed generation allows individual customer to generate power and using whatever method they find appropriate. So if some customers they find wind to be cheaper, they can use that. Some customer find micro turbine to be cheaper, they can use that. It is up, the choice is up to the consumer. The grid should not limit. No, you only have to use this, or you cannot even generate anything. Only we will provide. So this thing should not be there. That individual customer can tailor their generation directly to their load. Okay, so that they can also control and increase or decrease their generation, and they can support this grid. Whenever the grid power fails, they can support their own load or maybe even support the grid whenever the grid may require any generation if the generation adequacy of the grid is not there. Price signaling to the customer is a features to reduce this, to increase the customer participation and reduce power peaks and system. So during off peak, the price is reduced significantly, and mostly this heating load, cooling load, such things they can have. Means at any given time, a 15 minutes shut off of AC will not change much, whereas heat is stored kind of quantity. The convenience of the customer is not reduced much, but it actually reduces lot of loading of the system. So this can be done. And most important thing is this thing. The price could be changing in seconds. It is not months and okay, next billing cycle the power is electricity is cheaper or costly, or it's not like that. It can be dynamic. It can change within terms of seconds also. And the equipment should be able to respond to those price signals. So this was all about general smart grid. Okay, now slowly we will move towards uh, 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 smart grid protection for the smart grid. I think I am good on time. The 45 minutes we have used for the smart grids, but further now we will be focusing more on the protection aspects of the smart grids. Okay, so first we start with the smart grid standard support for protection and control. So PRD is acronym for protective relay devices. There is something else also, some other acronym is also used, that is called IED. IED is intelligent electronic device. People used to use IED earlier, but then IED was causing confusion because security people and people also use IEDs for this improvised explosive devices. The bombs exploded by terrorists and Taliban and such things, they are called IEDs. So power system people moved away from IEDs and now we call them as PRDs, protective relay devices. It is just a relay that with some more features. So that is the smart grid technologies supports the role of protective relay devices with what? With this thing, interoperative, making them interoperative and communicable, so that a two relays of two different manufacturers. They can communicate with each other because remember three key points of the smart grid is, is wide area kind of measurements, communication, and uh, uh, different kind of measurements are used. It's not only simple CTPT measurements, but environmental measurements, some temperature measurements of some equipment, uh, oil level of transformers, a lot of things are there. A lot of other informations are required, speed of generators, uh, voltage level, frequency, waveform distortions, TFD, everything. So lot of things have to be shared between one device and another device, and they need to be interoperative. You should not worry. Mhm. Like using internet, you don't worry about whether you are using Apple phone or you are using Samsung phone or you are using anything else. Just say that if it is using 4G technology, you know that it will work. We have to make our power systems and smart grid things such a way that whatever device I can use, I can just plug it and be confident that it will work and it will communicate. So there are some standards which makes this interoperative uh, formats easy. The most important is IEC 61850 standard. I'll be talking about it in more detail later on. But this is for the protective relays that operates within substations or between the substations also. We started with within substations, but now it is extended between substations also. Means all protective relays, modern protective relays, PRDs, modern PRDs, they support this thing, and they can exchange some informations between themselves or between some central control stations also. Then there is a standard called multi-speak. Multi-speak is specific for distribution systems or otherwise a CIM, Common Information Model. And that is based on IEC 61 968 and 61 970. These are the communication models for transmission systems and the control center of the SCADA system. If they want to share some information between say a SCADA system of state of Kerala and a SCADA system of state of Tamil Nadu, how do they share? They can share using CIM in a mm, very standardized manner. This is also important for enabling our power electricity market. Means you have to know how much is generated at what point and whether how much load is consumed by what mm, consumer at what time. This thing you have to be shared and you have to be actually integrated with the billing and uh, mm, uh, and you have to also be sure that whatever somebody has purchased the power was actually delivered. This informations to enable this information to sharing between the power exchange and the consumers or power utility and the power exchange, all the things are based on the standard CIM. Then synchrophasor standard. This is a very nice standard. All PMUs in the world they work with C37118. So if you are working with PMUs, PMU, I myself work with PMU most often. Is this thing that any make of PMU will know that it will work with C37118. So there is a device called PDC, phasor data concentrator. I can pick up any PDC and can, that PDC can talk with PMU and get the data from the PMU. PMU is PMU is phasor measurement units. It measures the voltages and currents at the substations, transmit them in terms of phasors in real time to a control centers, and it works seamlessly always. Then there are standards for interconnections of our uh, inverter based resources IBR to grid. That also have to be standardized so that we achieve all our features of uh, interoperable, intermittent generation, integration, and such things. So this IEEE 2030 is for microgrid. IEEE 1547 is very famous standard. Most of you may be knowing it. Is for interconnection of inverter-based resources to the grid, and all of them have some features of the protection system. All these things. 1650 is specific for protections. This one is also kind of specific for monitoring control protection systems. And these are for connections of inverter-based resources, but they incorporate protection features like anti-aliasing or over frequency, under frequency control, or under voltage, over voltage right through features. All these things are covered in. So if you read a lot of smart grid papers, you would be coming across some of the standards. And I have mentioned the standards with numbers so that anybody interested in looking them further can get all. Uh, Actual standards are much costly, but most of colleges have subscription to at least IEEE part. So IEEE standards should be available through IEEE Explore. IEC also sometimes are available through academic institutes. Otherwise, they are slightly difficult to get, but it is worthwhile to read through them, to understand them, and apply them in your research many times, so that you get some flavor of realistic kind of applications. Okay, so again, slightly now moving further into the mm, protection side is this thing, situational analysis is is a shift from our terminology, shift in terminology. Like protection system is not only now protection system, not the ambulance sitting at the valley, but it is a more kind of situational analysis. It is a kind of still not the fencing at the hilltop, but a kind of alarm system that if somebody is moving towards the edge of the hill and maybe there is danger of falling down, you should come to know, analyze the system that there is something is happening like this and sound alarm and sound something, so alert people. Okay, to do that, uh, how it can be done is this thing that as more and more data becomes available from protective relays, sensors, and PMUs, it's imperative that communication channels that can move the data we build. It is not that whatever information we have collected is stored locally. Local information is not so much. Information available at some central location in from wide area is useful. So the communication channel to move this data be built. Okay. Then just collecting data at some central location also again is not enough useful unless you have done data processing fast enough. Okay, so the data be processed fast enough to be useful, and then data should be adequately described and organized. Okay, you should know that okay, whatever voltage measurements I have done or whatever current measurement I have done, it belongs to feeder number 15 at this location, or feeder number 10 at that location, and should be organized. today, yesterday, day before yesterday, last year, anything somebody wants. If it is organized, you can retrieve it and access it. If it is described properly, that only you can do it. Otherwise, they are just random numbers, not useful for any other purpose. Okay, and the information should be available to those who need it across an enterprise. Some party who is just doing protection system should not be like, oh, mera data hai, I will not share it with anybody. Or somebody who is doing operation should be guarding the data. Should be available across enterprise, whoever needs it. And to that again, moving of data is important. Describing and organizing the data is important, so that anybody, third party also may be able to get the data and use it. So today in this presentation, I will be talking about these aspects of information uh, moving and proper describes and real time fast enough to be useful. So that this is a general feature of our system protection, uh, uh, on which we will further build on the smart grid protection system. We are not so much worried about very specific uh, how to do anti-islanding. So that kind of protection systems, I'm not going to talk. That you will be easily find out using a lot of papers. This things is a more higher level thing, which, as I said, when we are working in academic, we are more focused on our specific research and next paper and mm, a MTech project of 1 year, such thing, where we might overlook all these aspects unless we are really aware of it. So my aim for today is this thing, that what are the components of the smart grid that can be employed to address these challenges, that I want to make you like more aware, so that you can use this presentation further where you have got the foundation built, and you can make the superstructure much more stable and much more stronger. Then something should not be that some reviewer point out to your paper, oh, a fundamental cheat is you have missed. Should not be like that. Okay. So start with this conventional comparison between conventional and smart protection system. So conventional is like this: electromechanical relays, very old, 100-year, 120-year-old technology, and still it is employed. It is not like that they have just vanished. They are still there in some of the ways because they have very long life, and they are very stable. They used to serve. If there is some specific purpose, they serve very well. Then they come this solid state relays. They use transistors and analog circuits and the comparators and such things. They did not become much popular, but they were there for during 1970s, 80s era. Some relays were there, but from 1990s and 2000, uh, most of the relays are now microprocessor-based numerical relays. So these are the modern relays that most of the times when we see. And so when we talk about smart grid, and when we are concentrating on communication and all the things, we mostly talk about microprocessor-based numerical relays. Okay. And today we will be talking some further thing than this. These are all conventional protection systems. This is also 30-year-old technology now. Okay. So they all of these things followed same philosophy of protection. That is separate relay for each protection function. Overcurrent means overcurrent relays. Distance protection means distance protection relays. Differential protection relay. Separate box of the relay. All the things. Now control. Control is a separate thing from protection. Control means operation like opening and closing of circuit breakers and disconnectors. When we talk about this automatic reconfigurations of network and this thing, that comes under control. That does not come under traditional conventional protection system. Okay. Then control has to implement this interlocking to maintain safety and security of the system. You cannot just switch on anything, switch off anything at a random. You have to follow some proper steps like disconnectors. Disconnector, they don't have any breaking capacity. You cannot, if the disconnector is closed and the power is flowing through it, and it is charged, the current is flowing through it, you cannot open disconnector randomly. Otherwise, it will result into big disaster, very big safety hazard, big fire, complete uh, disaster. So they have to maintain this, implement interlocking, so that disconnector can be opened only if current flowing through that disconnector is zero. The circuit breaker connected in the series with the disconnector is in open state. Then and only then you can open a disconnector. Similarly, closing of circuit breaker may sometimes result into very high current if there is already a fault in the system. So you have to adhere to that. Closing switches in the network, all of them may not have full capability of closing at full load current and such things. So whenever you are designing our some kind of intelligent reconfiguration algorithm for your academic research, you have to be very careful of what you are proposing, what you are doing, whether you are proposing opening of some switches or not, and whether switches would be available at that location, pole mounted. If every pole, if you want to do some kind of switching, then every pole you may have to have circuit breaker. Then whether it is feasible or not, whether it is very costly or not, you have to always think. Then all this control can be done at local level or a substation control room. So it can be manually, some person has to go there and do, because a lot of things are not motorized in traditional case. Even if something is motorized, can it be done only locally, or can it be done remotely from 100 kilometers away? These all things are, because if you want to do it all 100 things away, whether this interlocking is possible or not from very remote locations or not. These things have to be thought of and do. And traditionally, it operated separate from the protection systems. Protection system was separate, control system was separate. Now, when we think about all the features and all the functions of smart grid, what we thought, we should be thinking of protection and control together. It is not two separate things. That is one fundamental aspect of our thinking, that protection system and control system have merged together for smart grid. Okay. Then there are some of the features which there is this IEEE document that I used, they surveyed, and what are the requirements from the users that the smart grid protection and control system should have is is this thing that it should be configurable and programmable logic. It should not be hard coded. ऐसा ही होगा, means somebody has designed the system, the relay, and it will work only in that way. It should be programmable. Then it should be adaptive relay. Is one of the most popular topic of any paper writing. Is adaptive relay. That the relay settings should change from system conditions. If the condition is like this, if there is a microgrid, it is connected to the grid, and the condition is different, the relay setting should be different. If the grid goes away and microgrid is operating in islanded condition, then the relay setting should be different. These things are good features, and the modern smart grid protection system should have such features of adapting to system conditions. Then local remote communication, as we already know, PMU functionalities is there for very good data collections and good sensors. Monitoring functions of logic elements to avoid misoperations. This uh, mm, should know from remote that whether a circuit breaker is in close position, whether circuit breaker is in open position, whether this relay is already tripped, or whether this relay is in lockout. There are a lot of logical elements are there, and their state should be measurable, should be able to monitor from remote. Like logic which provides information of availability of the scheme. Some scheme is there, say under voltage load shedding, under frequency load shedding, whether that scheme is available in this network or not, and how much load shedding is possible. This thing information should be there. Okay. Then cyber security is going on. The importance of cyber security will keep on increasing. So now we come to some more further specifics on this. That is a centralized protection and control system. This is a concrete example of a smart grid protection system. Again, the foundation part, not the actual protection function. Okay. So this thing, that modern protection and control systems is based on the 16850, where the protection and control are merged in a single device, and the interoperability between relays of different vendors is achievable. Okay, and the common hardware platforms and the software-based engineering is there. Okay. They also support non-conventional instrument transformers, means Rogowski coil, capacitive voltage dividers, and such things are supported. This system nowadays is called Substation Automation System, SAS. That is, Substation Automation System provides protection, control, automation, monitoring, and communication capability, everything together as a part of comprehensive substation control and monitoring solution. It is there. All can be built using a standard called IEC 16850. Okay. So this is a kind of pictorial description of protection system evolution. So we start with number one. Number one was this non-microprocessor relays, that electromechanical or static relays, and that were there. And here PU means process unit. A process unit is anything, can be instrument transformers, sensors, or circuit breakers. Instrument transformer, sensors, you take data from it. Circuit breakers, you give data from it. So this arrow is both way. Relay take data from instrument transformers, relay give trip signals to circuit breakers. But ultimately, all these things is called PU. So this is the first generation. It used to be there, and the red signal means the red arrows are hardware connections. Then there was something called RTU, that is remote terminal unit. This thing is, you can add it to a non-microprocessor relay also, which can take some signals from it and derive do some kind of calculations, and it can communicate with your SCADA system, EMS, DMS. EMS is Energy Management System, Distribution Management System. This was there. This is first generation. The next generation, the first step of communication was through RTUs. The RTU is 1970 technologies. So almost now 50-year-old technology. The third generation is this thing, is with called IEDs. As I said, IED means this is a old terminology where we call IED means intelligent electronic device. Now we call them as PRDs, protective relay devices, but which had a higher level of communication, fast communication. And this GOOS message, GOOS is um, generalized object-oriented substation event. So any event in the substation, tripping of a circuit breaker, opening of a circuit breaker, closing of a circuit breaker, any small event can be called as a GOOS, substation event. Okay, so this message between different relays can be communicated within the substation and can also be communicated to the outside area. This was the third generation. Here, this is the still red arrows. Red arrows means hardwired connections, hardwired. Okay. The fourth generation is now people are moving toward it, is this thing, where we have communication at the top also, communication at the bottom also. This PU has changed down to MU, merging unit. Merging unit means it takes this voltage current sense measurements from CTPTs, converts it into digital format, and the communication between the relay and this thing is now not hardware but through communication channels. But it is like LAN kind of communications. So this part is the fourth generation, the present generation. If you want to do go for smart grid and systems, you have to at least achieve this, or you have to achieve something more than that. More than that is what I'm going to talk about. This is centralized protection system, protection and control system, CPC, where there is no hardwired connection between them. The data is also not confined to one ID. Here also all the data, it goes to only one relay. One data, one relay. Means one merging unit, one relay, one merging unit, one relay. That association is there. For smart grid, we want to break that association also, because we have to get data from wide area, from different, because we have to take system view, not the individual equipment view. Okay, so this was some definition of this centralized protection and control. This is informal definition. The centralized protection and control system is a system comprised of high performance computing platform capable of providing protection, control, monitoring, communication, and asset management functions by collecting data those functions require using high speed time synchronized measurements within a substation. Okay, this is the formal definition, informal definition of CPC. Again, think of high speed and time synchronized measurements. Not the measurements should not be hardwired, it should be through communications. But in communication, we are not compromising with speed and it should always be time synchronous. Then and only then we can do all the other functions. Okay. The components of the CPC. So how to achieve all these things is is first of all is the merging unit. What is merging unit? A merging unit is a device that takes analog inputs and gives out digital sample values in this format 61850 9-2. It is, I think I apologize for very small diagram, but it is like this. The CTPTs are there. The merging unit is mostly embedded inside the CTPT. It is not a separate thing you just connect. The CTPT output are not available now. 1 ampere, 5 ampere connections or 610 volt connections for the voltage is not available anymore. What we get is the sampled values output itself. All this thing is embedded inside it, which takes the analog inputs, do anti-aliasing, do analog to digital conversion, ADC, some kind of calibration is there, and time synchronization is important. Final output is the sampled values. So if this thing is there, then there is no limitation of city burden kya hai, VT burden kya hai, because it is only getting connected to the small merging unit, and burden of this is very small. So here we can use different kind of sensors. It is not necessary that you use electromagnetic uh, CTs or CVTs, capacity voltage transformers, not like that. You can use Rogowski coil, you can use optical current and voltage sensors. So different technologies can be now accommodated using merging units. So merging units should accept variety of inputs, conventional and non-conventional sensors, and output is standardized. So merging unit, whatever it is ultimately using, but output we are sure that it will give you according to 1650 9-2. So any other device, if it understands 1650 9-2, it can communicate with this merging unit. And so we have separated out the input information gathering from our main relay functions. So relay should not worry 1 ampere city hai, 5 ampere city, because that itself was very big worry earlier. Then next part is remote IO. Okay, the remote IO is the connected to the output of our relays, where a relay, when it takes circuit breaker tripping decisions or the control signals like opening of a circuit breaker, opening of a disconnector, closing of disconnector, or changing the tap changer positions, everything. That also had to be earlier hardwired. The wire is taken from trip signal of the relay to the trip signal of circuit breakers, and if there is some breakage in the trip circuit, then there was a failure of protection systems. All these things are eliminated, and now everything is done through IEC 1650 Goose. So Goose is, as I will repeat again, generalized object-oriented substation event. Any substation event that and you want to take, you can publish, and somebody can subscribe to that message and act on it. That device which acts on this Goose message is called remote IO, input and output. It is remote. Okay. So lower it is 1650 9-2 for sample values, higher line it is 1650 Goose. And there are modern new devices which may combine these two together, merging unit and RIO, remote IO together. Such devices are called process interface device, PID. You see, there are some acronyms are there. As we go on in the market protections, people are now much more familiar with this all acronyms, and they only talk about MU, RIO, PIDs. This thing. This is the new jargon that is getting developed. And the applications, whether you want to apply merging units, remote I/O, or process interface devices, depends on what kind of applications you have to do, economic considerations, and the engineering part. Okay, so next important part is time synchronization, because when we are talking about uh, mm, accepting data from very different sources, wide area measurements, it is very important that everything is time synchronized. You should not be using one data at one time from one point and another data from some different point at this time. And this time synchronization has to be maintained so that you can take a proper decision. Total synchronization in the system has to be maintained uh, to achieve this thing. There is again a new standard and support from IEC called Precision Time Protocol, PTP. Okay. So you have to apply this PTP, and the time synchronization accuracy that one can achieve is less than 1 microsecond. So any component that if you are sure that it is uh, synchronized with PTP, you will be sure that it is accurate within plus minus 1 microsecond. Whatever timestamp it has given would be accurate. And application of PTP is cheap. Any computers in your lab also, you can you can do synchronization within the lab computers through PTP. So all 20 lab computers in the lab can be synchronized with each other using PTP, and only one computer of them, if it gets synchronized with the GPS, global positioning system time, then all computers in that lane, you can get that everybody is synchronized with the GPS. So it is much more cheaper. If I say PMU, if you are aware about what is PMU, each PMU requires a GPS signal. So if you have 5-6 PMUs in the substation, each one has to be connected through GPS. It is much very costly thing. Otherwise, if you apply PTP, then only one GPS receiver is required, and you can distribute the time of that GPS to every PMU using PTP. So modern PMUs, they should support such features. This is just an example of why how that 1 microsecond accuracy is there, and it is expected that 16 hops away the accuracy should be maintained plus minus 1 microsecond. So there is only one time source, one GPS. It gives time to one switch, another switch, and communication between one switch to another switch means one hop. So there can be 16 hops, and still the time received by whatever relay or whatever you want, it is guaranteed that it would be within plus minus 1 microsecond. Then the communication network that itself should be reliable. When we talk about power system network and reliability of power system network, first of all, through smart grid, we have to also worry about reliability of our communication network. So there are some standards and some architectures which is like this. There are two standards. One is called high availability seamless redundancy, HSR. Another is called parallel redundancy protocol, PRP. Both of them are defined in this standard IEC. And what this is that any device can communicate with other device using two separate lanes. So within substation also we can have two separate lanes which are not connected at all with each other, and so they provide this parallel redundancy protocol. Two parallel things are there. If one fails, another will give. A PRP device can most of the time will receive data from both of them, actually duplicate data, but the data is also sent to both the lanes simultaneously. One of them will be ignored, but something happens, some problem occurs, only one data is received, then also it will work. So the reliability using two LAN is maintained, but this is maintaining two LAN is slightly more costly, and there is something called HSR, high availability seamless redundancy. Here also each device itself can receive two inputs, can give out two outputs, so that different paths can be configured and do. So engineering part of HSR is software engineering is slightly difficult, while here software engineering is easy and the physical wiring is slightly costly because you have to have two replicate at length. But they are all utmost important for reliable protection systems. Protection systems, when we talk, we always have to worry about reliability, backup protection, and such things are there. Similarly, now if you have, depending on the communication, you should have backup for the communication also. So PRP HSR provides zero loss, zero downtime, and seamless switchover that is required in the critical applications. Finally, this heart of our uh, smart grid protection system is high performance computing. And now, as we say that the input is separated out as a merging unit, the output is separated out as a RIO. The communication is separated out from merging unit to something central processing unit through HSR, and everything is time synchronized. What remains is this high performance computing, the central processing system, which uh, which process all the data. And then here is our algorithm, a protection algorithm that is running, uh, which can receive data, which can analyze data, which can say properly create information out of data, associate data with proper timestamp, proper element name and everything, and then understand what the data represents, whether there is any fault in the system or whether the fault is developing, any incipient fault is there or not. That kind of things they do. And why high performance computing is this thing, that unlike relays, they do not suffer from limitations of the space inside. A relay should be one box relay in a one panel. It can only have physical 3-4 connections of 3 CTs, 3 VTs, and such things. Yeah, this computing is not constrained by that. We can increase or decrease the size of this computing as per your wish. Okay, so they can be scaled as per requirements. They can handle 1,000 push messages at a time. And if we say that no, I want to handle 2,000, then increase the computing, increase some communication infrastructures, and we can get it 2,000. So our smart grid protection algorithms, if you want to have much more flexibilities, you have to always think about the CPC, where you can perform all computations using high performance computing. not worrying about okay embedded system, whether what is the memory requirement, what is the RAM, or how much operational speed it has. That independence you get if you work with high performance computing, mm, using CPC. So this is the, and the another main advantage of this thing is when you go in the field, is this thing that high performance computing hardware is not limited to our power systems or power industry. It is used by many industries. Banking industry uses, communication industry uses, and so computational innovations that may go on in that area, we can adapt it, and we can absorb that thing easily. They are cost effective also in such a way. They are not specific to a relay, because if you just go and try to purchase a distance protection relay now, it may cost into 20 lakh, 30 lakh kind of money. High performance computing computers in would come much cheaper than that, and may provide much higher performance than that. Only thing is the algorithms that you have to develop yourself. So, but protection suppliers also benefit from this. That protection system suppliers means big industries. Like if you talk about big industries in power system protection, we will think about Siemens, ABB, GE, SEL, all this. These are all power system people. They give relays, but their core business is power system. So they can focus mostly on power system algorithm. We, as an academic, we can think of algorithms, and we can, our expertise is in this to give protection algorithms. We can focus on it rather than worrying about which relay to be used. उसमें क्या होगा उसमें whether space would be available or not, whether it will support neural network, whether it will support SVM, whether it will support fuzzy logic. That we don't worry, because high performance computing will support everything. So different new algorithms can be developed and deployed if we, and that are what is needed for our smart grids. Because smart grids, we are not constrained with real time fast calculations, so it should be very simple, should use not very high sampling rate. We are not worried. We can use very high sampling rate with this thing, as long as we are using this computer as a relay, and high performance computer as a relay. Okay. So this is, I think I'll just slightly go more quickly, is the architectures of our uh, mm, central processing system. So architectures, just some examples are there. Is this thing, because this also will depend on how much is your budget and how much you want to experiment, because traditionally our power system people, also power system protection people mostly, are mm, very conservative people. They don't accept any new things very readily. We say we'll try it out first, we see its performance. So that, so what happens is this architecture type 1, where the normal relays are also there. In parallel to that, we also have a central life protection and control system. And we keep on comparing output of this and output of this, and the performance check karte hai. So we have, and but when we have centralized IDs, at least the CTPTs are hardwired, while these connections could be through that goose. So merging unit is not used. Maybe remote IO can be used, but all the data of IDs are shared to CPC through a common LAN. So CPC will have data of all the n number of IDs, but one individual ID will have only data of that ID. CPC can have now high performance computing. It can do functions of ID. It can send out the goose messages, which can pass through this session bus to specific IDs. It can be addressed at this ID should do, and it can also perform trip. But a single CPC is used. This is for the people who want to try out the CPC. The next is this thing, architecture type 2. Here the primary protection is by the conventional and the backup is provided by CPC. So you have, for each protection function, you have primary relay and backup relay. So now instead of directly IED getting connected to over this thing, so here it was direct connection from IED to, here you have merging unit, IMU. IMU means intelligent merging unit. I will come to that thing. So it takes the connections of the CTPT and handling of the goose messages. Now this IMU intelligent merging unit will talk to IID also, and it will talk to CPC also. So CPC will receive data directly from merging unit without passing through IID. IID will also receive get some data to control centers and such things. So any protection function trip, primary may be through IID, backup can come from CPC. So this is architecture type 2, where you have now got some more confidence in the functioning of the CPC, and you have eliminated the traditional backup. The traditional backup is for each kind of functions you have two different physical relays. So that the second physical relay is eliminated, that is given to a CPC, and the ultimate thing is directly all CPC. So primary protection is also taken away, but to have redundancies, we have to have two CPC now, CPC A, CPC B, and no separate IDs, just the merging units and PIDs, you can say, process interface units, which takes data, also handles the goose messages, gives directly data to one CPC, directly to another CPC. Okay. So this is the architecture type 3. All our smart grid functions should kind of focus on such architectures, at least in a near future now, because then you have full freedom of implementing any kind of algorithm which receives data from anywhere in the systems. This is now independent. You can implement as many IMUs where whatever bus you want, wherever you want. The IMU is also not limited to just the CTPT. Whatever information you want to get, you can connect to IMU, temperatures of transformers, circuit breaker positions, disconnector positions, the sag of transmission line, anything, weather information, rainfall, everything can be connected to a IMU, get transmitted to get connected to a LAN and received by a CPC. Now CPC, it is responsibility of your algorithm and your intelligence to use all this information and provide a proper protection function. Okay. So this is the foundation level, how the smart grid protection system should work. Now some applications and advanced protection functions. This is very little thing I want to discuss. With this I can maybe finish my presentation. But here also I'm not talking about very anything. Is a general presentation. Is the first thing is IMU. IMU is intelligent merging unit. So one of the most basic and obvious application of CPC is to have some protections functions in the merging unit itself. It is the kind of ultimate backup protection, which can be something like this only: time delayed overcurrent, under voltage function that can be performed by the merging unit itself. So if you think this architecture, some traditional person, old 50, 60 or protection functions who have spent his whole life in protection system in the substations will always ask first question: where is the backup? Uh, what ultimate fallback thing? What happens, say, if your CPC A fails? What happens if CPC B also fails? Or maybe if both of them are working, what happens if your process bus LAN fails? Anything can happen in power systems. Means these people know that anything can happen. They have seen that thing happening in their life. And the protection systems we have seen, they cannot depend on something. This will work always. So what is the ultimate protection system? The ultimate protection system would be itself in the merging unit itself, IMU. If no trip signal is received from anywhere, the merging unit itself can say a this thing, time delayed overcurrent. It sees that a current is there and it has gone to about some limit. It will wait for some signals to trip from the CPC or IID. If it does not get, ultimately after some time delay, it can itself take decisions and trip under voltage, over voltage. So these are very simple functions. Overcurrent relays, what we think and what a lot of smart grid researchers are working on: overcurrent relays, coordination and such things. So all that thing can go away if we have this intelligent merging unit, which ultimately takes some kind of time delayed as a backup. So that intelligence will make this merging unit as intelligent merging unit. This is the ultimate backup protection in case of total communication failure between the IMU, that is intelligent merging unit, and the centralized protection and control system. Then advanced protection systems. One is this thing, hidden failure identification. So when you have lot of data available from different locations, you can identify some hidden failure. So you can have redundant measurements. Some feeder is there, one city is located at this point, one other city is located at that point, and you know that both of them are in series. The current of this city and that city should match. All this intelligence can be built in the CPC, and you can identify if there is some drift in the measurements or not. Earlier, there were two different relays. They were not talking to each other. So we don't know. So if main relay, backup relay, they are getting input from two cores of the city. But if one city is faulty, they will not come to know. But here, see, because all the measurements are merged together, you can have such functions which can identify this hidden failure. And usefulness is this thing that you can, as we talk about first thing, that incipient failure means actual failure has still not occurred. but it may occur in some very specific conditions, that whether there is overload conditions or whether there is some um, high impedance fault, this may get triggered. At that time, you may come to know that, okay, my RCT was not working properly, my relay was not working properly, and it has tripped at a wrong tripping. That kind of thing you can avoid if you have identified hidden failure earlier. Then that incipient fault detection. This was the protection system failure earlier, the hidden failure. Now here is actual power system thing getting deteriorated. The transformer is showing higher 10 delta measurements, higher moisture in oil, the age of transformers, age of circuit breaker, age of your cable insulations, everything you can monitor and detect that some fault is going to happen, not today, but if same conditions persist, then maybe 1 month later, 6 months later, 1 week later, may get some kind of fault. So that can do, because all the how we can do is because this thing, that all the measures are recorded and analyzed from history to find the trends and events. So something, some transformer is it is, we are measuring C and 10 delta of the transformer. That record remains in the CPC in some archival hard disk and this thing. Today it has measured this thing. 1 month later it has measured something. 6 months later it has measured something, and you may see a trend that is increasing, and you can give some early warning system is there, that you give early warning that this trend is not showing mm, good results, and ultimately it may fail sometime later. So that incipient fault detection, mm, such kind of protection, advanced kind of protection can be done through CPC. So another very important thing is this thing, a pre-configured protection. So if you have a a substation or a microgrid relay, a microgrid, I say that okay, you have two battery backups, two photovoltaic, one this thing, one that thing, that is defined properly. And then you can have a protection system also very well properly configured, factory made. It is, you just have to put that thing, bring it here. Software is done, is designed, locally tested in the factory to work properly, and it just runs. So it reduces this installation and commissioning and the site testing effort, because a lot of things are when you are managing small sites, these things prove very costly. If it is some small site and everything is packaged in the factory, and you just have to just bring it here and plug it in, then it is much more easier. So standardized protection and control for modern requirements like grid connected microgrid and integrations of disturbance can be can be done. So all features of anti-aliasing, load right through, under voltage right through, under frequency, over frequency protections, everything can be combined, standardized, done, computer program fed to a um, high performance computing thing, and you can just bring it here and plug it and forget it. So you can do, and some specialized protections wherever you want to incorporate can be incorporated easily, like subsynchronous resonance, PAX device protections, that can be incorporated by, like like you install program in your computer, it can be just installed and work. because all the information required for this protection functions are available. The output is also in the software format, not a big issue. So with this, this is just a summary of what we had talked from protection point of view. Okay, that what is conventional protection and protection for smart grids. Protection for smart grid is CPC. Yes. So conventional is relay asset management. So many relays you have to uh, separately identified, specified, configured, tested, and maintenance you have to do. So many relays. If you go to any plant, industrial plant, you can see that there are hundreds of relays. I have worked with a plant which has more than 1,000 relays. In each relay, the settings you have to do separately. You have to configure. Okay, this setting is there. It is connected to this relay. This city, it is connected to this circuit breakers, and lot of headache is there. Here, few devices need to be identified, specified, and configured in the CPC. Device management. Each relay has its own separate settings, and even the if there is a different generations within plant. One plant was developed 20 years ago, then some expansion took place 5 years ago. Then what is present conditions? Some relay have malfunctioned and had to be replaced. Then there could be different manufacturers, their own philosophy, and the relay earlier pattern maybe electromechanical, now it is numerical, something else is there. All these things, a big headache is there in actual plant, and each has to be handled separately. Well, here some common configurations and the shared setting can be done. Then, but main so these two are advantages of CPC. Some disadvantages is that the maintenance can be done separately. Per pay maintenance is possible. If you want to do testing of some relay, it can take out shutdown of only that feeder and you can do testing of that. Independent bay maintenance is not possible for centralized. When you go for centralized protections, if you want shut down centralized protections, everything shut down. So, but remote maintenance can be done, and the final tested programs can be deployed later. You do all the testing and everything and develop a new program and just come and install it new. That kind of thing is there. It is some people may prefer it, some people may not prefer it. Security wise also conventional has many access points. Here there are limited number of access points. And this thing, so in the summary, so advancement in protection and control technologies related to smart grid is discussed. The existing components of sensing, time synchronization, communication, high-end performance computing, everything are mature. Same as what like we have achieved maturity in now renewable generations and system. So, but thing is we have to bring everything together to make our system smart. So that thing, that bringing together is called the architecture. Some typical architectures that may emerge for smart grid protections were discussed. Generation 1, generation 2, generation 3. Till now is this limited with our imagination, how it would be there. Something else can also emerge. But advanced protection and control systems that are now possible through this salient features of smart grid protection were presented, that incipient fault, hidden fault detection. Further is up to the new researchers like you to take it up and develop protection algorithms which can take advantage of all the things. Mostly two advantages we have to always take. That all kind of measurements, whatever you want, would be required, would be available. That availability is only guaranteed through our CPC, where it is not limited to this information is there in that ID, you have to communicate with that ID. That communication is now standardized. You can demand that I want this information, it should be available. Next part is the speed of the communication. The speed is also very fast. All values are sampled synchronously and available in terms of milliseconds to centralized protection system. So you have to design the algorithms to take advantage of these two things. Wide array measurements, all measurements available together, all measurements available at a very fast rate and synchronized measurements. Then what protection systems you want to apply, that you can now think and apply. So any further details that you want to read through it is, as I said, there is a IEEE PSRC report 2015. This should be available almost uh, freely to everybody. But PSRC reports are just free for IEEE PES members, or otherwise IEEE Explore colleges have access. You should get it. And another is this the details of that merging unit and such parts. Digital measurements, that is one secret browser of 2019. This is also freely available. The secret browsers are like that they are available for SIGRE members free. If you are not SIGRE members, you have to pay for something. But after 2 years of publication, so 2019, and now we are into 2021, or actually 2022 in few days now. 2 years have gone. So these brochures would be available freely, and you can, anybody is interested and pursue this thing in much more details, you can go and read through this thing. So with this, I want to conclude my talk. And I think I'm in good time, maybe slightly late. But if we have few questions, I can take.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Dr. Gopal, for that insightful session. You have talked a lot from your own experience as well, and you have given a brief introduction to smart grids to for those who are not familiar with that. So thank you for that. So we don't have much time. So any questions from any participants? If you have any questions, please unmute yourself and you can ask. Okay, I don't think anyone has any question. Maybe so the recorded videos will be shared with the participants later, and you can go through the recorded videos later as well. So we'll formally stop this session. So and on behalf of the whole fraternity related to this FDP, I would like to express my gratitude and thanks to Dr. Gopal Gejjar for coming for this session and taking us through the different ways of smart protection in smart grid system. So thank you very much. As we
Thank
have,
you.
yeah. So we have the next session starting at 2:30 in the afternoon. So it will be the same link, and you can join in the same link at 2:30 in the afternoon. Okay. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Gopal.
Okay. Thank you.